what I want to show you is the procedure to go through to export and to re-import content from LiveDocs corpora and bring it into other corpora, because this is a point that a lot of people have problems with. And as you begin to work with your corpora and shuffle the language resources around, this is going to have to become second nature for all of you. I think I'm doing this in memoQ 9.7, but it's essentially the same in version 8.3. Now here I'm going to look at the resource console, and we're going to look at LiveDocs. I've got various corpora sitting on the server, and I've got some local corpora, which is indicated in this column here. I can click on this to sort. Now I've got my local corpora on the top, and I've got the server corpora down on the bottom. And I could also switch over and look at corpora on your server, for example. Okay, and in each corpus, as I selected, in the list below, there appears all of the documents that I have stored in that particular corpus. Now on the server, I've got, here we go. We have an empty corpus called My Other Extra Info Corpus. Okay, that is the corpus that I'm going to bring some exported things into. But let's have a look at different ways of exporting information. Let's see. For example, I've got this file here, which is sitting in a server-based corpus called KSL. And I want to move that individual document into this corpus, which is right now empty. So here I select this, and you can do this from within a project using the ribbons, but it's just convenient to do it here. And here I look, okay, I've got this function here, export, for the corpus. I'm just going to click on that to see what kind of a file it's going to create. Okay, notice the extension. Okay, it's creating a zip file which will contain all of the documents in the corpus. In this particular case, there's just one. Oh no, excuse me. There's two documents in this corpus. So let's create demo exports. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a file, and we will save the export of this corpus into the demo exports folder. Okay, and the file will be called KSL zip. And I'm expecting it to have both of the documents that are there. So we'll go ahead and click save. And now I'm going to take this one document down here, which is called Anlagedatenschutz.docx. And I'm going to use this other export function down here at the bottom. Okay, the export that is referring to the individual documents within memoQ. And in fact, I can select multiple files, click export. Let's do that and just see what happens. Okay, it's interesting. I've selected multiple files, and notice I'm also going to be creating a zip folder. Why? Because I've got the option selected to include them all in a single archive. Well, I'm going to deselect that now. And I'll use the browse button. Okay, and so I'm simply going to specify that these documents be exported into this demo exports folder. But what format are they going to be in? Ooh, interesting question. And let's see, from here, oh, let's see where I've got some other things. Okay, I'm going to select this individual file here. Now I've selected only a single file, and I'm using the individual document export function. Here, because I've only selected one document, it tells me what the file name and the path will be. And in fact, the extension being used here is memoQXLZ. So is it going to the same place? Yeah, it's going to the same folder as last time. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, let's go find that folder and open it up. Here is the corpus that we exported, and I will unzip that, create a folder here, and if we look inside, sure enough, there are both of the documents that were contained in that corpus, and they are memoQXLZ files. Okay, and here we have all of the 3 files that were exported using the individual export function. They are also memoQXLZ files. So when you export an entire corpus, you're going to get a zip file that contains an memoQXLZ file for each individual item in the corpus. Or if you select multiple documents, you have the option to create a zip file as well. So you could maybe export only half the documents in the corpus if the other half are not interesting, or only documents that have certain keywords or whatever. Now, here's a place that things can get confusing. Does anybody recognize the extension memoQXLZ from some other place in memoQ? Do you remember seeing this somewhere else?
Isn't this the extension for just bilingual files, translation files?
Yeah, it's the extension that they use for bilingual translation files that contain the skeleton and all the other information so that you can create a target file that might even contain the version history and all kinds of other stuff. If you export a document from LiveDocs and you get an memoQXLZ file like this, you might think that this is a translation bilingual. And so you might try to import that into a project as a translation document. Okay. If you have an memoQXLZ file that you've created from a translation, basically a bilingual backup, like we were talking about doing when we talked about possibilities for automation with templates and so forth, where you automatically create this backup on the server that has everything, the version history and the skeleton and so on. So you can, basically restart the translation work on that if you've removed the doc. It doesn't work that way with these files. And in fact, when you try to import these using the translation import function, or the import function for translation files, and then you select that memoQXLZ file that you have exported from LiveDocs, and you try to import it as a translation document, and then they tell you, oh, here's an memoQXLZ file. We don't know what that is. And of course, that's probably going to be very confusing, because if this had been exported from a translation document in a project, it would know what it was. It would just bring it in. and it would show you the original file name and all kinds of stuff. No, it doesn't do that here. So then you have to manually apply the XLIF filter to it. And then you can bring it in as if it were a translation document. Why would you want to do something like that? Well, I've got a couple of articles on my blog and maybe a video or two that talk about ways to do X-translate, create version-based translations if you messed up and didn't save the version history or didn't save a regular translation file that's an memoQ. So basically, I created a workaround years ago for how to take LiveDocs documents and use them as if they were version 1 of a translation. But you have to do this weird workaround that has probably confused you all so much you don't even remember what I just said. Would have to go back and look at the tape if it were ever important to do that, or go find the blog posts or the videos or whatever. But the fact that they're using this memoQ is confusing as hell to a lot of people, and it requires special tricks, and it just shouldn't be done this way, but it is what it is. So be aware of it. It's possible that somebody might send you a file that they exported from LiveDocs, and you think it's a translation document, and you try to bring it in, and then you run into all of the trouble that I just described. Okay, but anyway, so we've got all this stuff here. Now we want to put it into our empty corpus. How do we do that? Well, there is no function that just lets you send a document from one corpus to another. So in order to move a document from one corpus to another corpus, you have to export it first. We've seen 2 ways to export. We can export the entire corpus or some number of documents into a zip file, or we can import or we can export them as individual memoQ documents. Okay, and by the way, monolingual resources, something is maybe just a Portuguese newspaper article that you put in LiveDocs or whatever, that will also import as an memoQ. And so memoQ gets kind of confused by this because it's not necessarily a bilingual file. Okay, but here we are at my other extra info corpus, and we want to import that stuff. Let's look at what possibilities we've got. Well, up in the corpus menu, there is no import function. So basically, we've got to be working at the document level. Okay, well, so we go down to the menu that has to do with documents. Okay, we've got something here that says import document. Let's try it and see what happens. Okay, the reason I'm showing you this is because these functions are confusing. Import document. Okay, well, so far so good. Let me select this one, for example. Okay, it shows it to me in the list. It looks like it's going to work. Whoa. Okay, using the import document function there, which in the ribbon would be the import function that's under new content. Okay, it says one memoQ file. Here it is. It shows me the extension, and it doesn't know what filter to use. Whoa. Okay, this is exactly what you'll see if you're trying to bring this in as a translation document. This import document function that is on the left side of the documents menu for a LiveDocs corpus in the resource console is the import function that uses the translation document filters. And I told you this memoQ is not understood as a translation document. If this were an MQXLZ that was created from a translation, it would come in just fine. In fact, let me show you one of those that I've created. Import document, let's see. Whoops. These are the exports. Let me find the, here we go. Okay, I've got this file, which is an actual translation document, MQXLZ export. See, here it knows that this is a memoQ XLIF, a memoQ bilingual, because this MQXLZ file was exported from the translations list. I sent it to a colleague of mine who asked me to do some contracts for her. So she can import this on her memoQ, and she can do whatever edits she wants to do and then export the target document to deliver to her client. Okay, it behaves completely differently. So if you see something like this happen, just know you probably are getting the two different kinds of MQXLZs mixed up. And almost nobody knows how to deal with this properly. It just confuses the heck out of them. So anyway, that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so we're not going to want to go there. But if I had a bunch of things in a folder that I wanted to bring in, I could import. Let's see, I'm still in here. Okay, I sent her these drafts. Okay, well, let's see what happens with those. Okay, these look like all docx files. These were the drafts in Microsoft Word. They're all English documents. Okay, it uses the Microsoft. Okay, Microsoft filter. Okay, it recognizes that these are not bilingual documents. I don't know if you noticed, but when we were bringing in the translation bilinguals, it actually offered me the chance to select both the source and the target language. Here it recognizes that these are monolingual, so I'll say, okay, these are English, United States. Create a preview, sure, why not? So you can use the document-related, the translation document-related import functions, which are on the left side of the menu in the resource console and kind of in the middle of the ribbon if you're in a project. And you can use these to bring in entire folders full of information. And here you see these listed as monolingual documents. And I could say this was what was delivered. Okay, and I use that as a keyword. Okay, but we still haven't done what we set out to do. What we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in content that was exported from a different LiveDocs corpus. Well, we do that with the import function over here. Okay, now let me go back to our folder. Just a minute. That is here. Okay, and here you can see that we have only the possibility to bring in LiveDocs MQXLZ files. So what do you do then? What do you think you do if you export a whole corpus and end up with a zip file and you want to bring those into a different corpus? How do you get to that content to import it? Any suggestions? Anyone? You do what we did here, and you unzip the zip file. So when you export a corpus, or you export more than one document from a corpus and have them put all in one file, a zip file, to bring that content into a different corpus, you have to unpack the zip file like we did here. So now we've got these files that were exported in a zip file. That was, let me see if I still got it here. It was this one, ksl.zip. We unpacked the zip file, and it had the contents of that archive, of that LiveDocs corpus. And so here we go ahead and we can do multiple selections. So I've selected those two files that were in the zip file when I exported the entire corpus. And I'll just click open. And you see nothing happening. Probably it hasn't refreshed the view. So I'm simply going to click on a different corpus and then click back, and we'll see if this list at the bottom updates. Yes, it does. So if you are transferring information from one LiveDocs corpus to another, as I just did while you were watching, you may think it didn't work because memoQ is stupid and fails to refresh the view. Now, I'm working in memoQ 9.7, so this is the latest version. I can't remember when I first complained about this. I think it was 6 years ago. They still haven't fixed it. Well, what happens under circumstances like that? You import and you import and you import and you think it's not working, and then you end up with 5 copies of the same document in your stupid corpus. So if you have to move content from one corpus to another and you think, oh my God, it didn't work, be aware that there is a refresh bug in memoQ. So you might just have to click on a different corpus for a minute and then go back. And then the documents that you think you imported will most likely appear. It's unfortunate. This is just one of those things that it is unfortunately necessary to be aware of now until they fix this. Okay, so this is all that I want to show you today for LiveDocs, because coming to grips with these menus and getting to understand the imports and the exports and all that sort of thing can be a little bit confusing. But actually, I will show you one more thing. I'm going to go ahead and just remove these, clear the corpus out. Yes, I want to take these all out. Remove, yes, everything. And I'm going to import a folder structure, but I'm going to import a particularly ambitious structure. Oh, this will be interesting. This is 1 point, whoops, according to my little tooltip here, this is 1.27 gigabytes worth of data. This is half of the 2019 DGT data, and I'm going to select that folder. Whoa, look at all those. Okay, and here I'm going to tell it to do only the TMX files, so star.tmx, star being a wildcard for any file name. Okay, in case there's any other junk that's there, that's all I want. Okay, so it's not going to import the .txt file, for example. It's here at the top of this list. All right. Click OK. And this might take a while. My God. I thought I had excluded this. And I'll just remove it from the list here. Okay, so we have 1,087 TMX files. That's half of the data from 2019. Okay, and there's all the individual file names, lots and lots and lots of them. Okay, now I told you that this DGT data is in 27 languages. And in fact, if you open up one of these TMX files in an editor like Notepad++, you will see all the individual languages. But when I do an import like this, either into a memoQ TM or into a LiveDocs corpus, I have the ability to select what will be the source and what will be the target language. And let's say in this particular case, I will make English to be the source. I think it's English UK in this. So it may not make a difference, but I don't remember if it does. And I will tell it to use Portuguese as the target language. Punjabi, here we go. Oops, yeah, Portuguese and Portugal. Okay, so it is going to extract just the English and the Portuguese content and create a preview and do so with all 1,000 and whatever files. And I will just let this thing run in the background while we do questions. I'm curious how long this will take. It's a little faster computer than before, but I think this is an online corpus, if I'm not mistaken. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, it's an online corpus, so this should be an interesting test. Yeah, well, here we go. Anyway, so while that's running, are there any questions? Now, we see something interesting here. And this, I was kind of hoping that this would happen. It doesn't look like this is scrolling anymore. It appears that my import is hung. Actually, I think the import was done some time ago of all 1,000 and whatever files were in this. But I've noticed that the import dialogues, when I'm importing a folder with thousands of documents, they tend to freeze or stop updating after a while. This is a peculiar feature of memoQ, so I'm simply going to click cancel. And it's not even going to like to do this. And it will actually take some time to cancel. So I'm going to do a really rude thing. I'm going to use the task manager to shoot down memoQ. That's always kind of a frightening thing to do. But I think, based upon my past experience working in scary ways like this, that actually everything worked. And that if I fire up memoQ again, and I have a look at that corpus that I was trying to populate with the 1,000 and something files, that I'm going to find them all. And again, this is kind of an uncomfortable way to work. You're not going to be importing a folder with 1,000 or more files in it every single day. But when you do, if it does seem that it has frozen, all is probably not lost, and that it probably worked exactly the way that you had hoped it would. And in fact, the way that we can check this, notice we see all these TMX files here, and they appear to be in alphabetical order, more or less. Yeah, that looks like alphabetical order. And I will scroll to the bottom of the list, and I will see what is the last file. Okay, it's this one. Now I'm going to have a look at the DGT data in that folder. And I'm going to scroll to the bottom of this list. No. I interrupted partway through. So how far did it make it? 116. Okay, it only made it here. Okay, so I guess it was still working on things when I interrupted it. But if I want to continue the import, I would then do so from this point, and I could go on. So I should have just let it continue to run in the background. But unfortunately, because the update freezes at some point, I often think that it hasn't worked. It's going much slower in this particular case because I am sending, normally if I were doing this on my local computer, I would probably experience the same freeze, but all of the documents would be uploaded. I am, however, uploading the documents from my local computer here in Portugal to the server, which is sitting in Berlin. So again, this is one of those things, if you walk away from it and have lunch and all, it's probably going to be done. Or do it locally and then publish the corpus on the server. That's the other approach that you can take. Again, this is one of those aspects that is not necessarily clean when you're working with large amounts of data. It can be uncomfortable, but if you have an interruption or you end up having to shoot it down, open up the corpus, look and see what the last document it is that imported, maybe check and make sure that it's complete, and then go back to the sources that you were importing and start where it left off.